Skeptic, hermetic, pathetic, analphabetic, forget all cosmetic, you need new poetic, aesthetic, eclectic, dialectic. Euro, don't be dogmatic, bureaucratic, you need to become pragmatic, to stop change, climatic, automatic, need contribution from the institution, to find solution for pollution, to save the children of the evolution.
A new poetic, dialectic, aesthetic, do we really need it? Dobro veče. Mir Burma. Good evening. My name is Filip Radunovic from the Erste Foundation.
My name is Hedvig Morvai from the European Fund for the Balkans.
So why are we here tonight? To discuss about Europe. Europe is in a crisis, as we know. We don't have to talk about this region in particular. We're in a crisis for a much longer time. So, what are the reasons, or what did bring us tonight? It's a sense that we share the same problems, a sense what we have framed today in a word, as we discussed with many NGO representatives this morning, and we called it the togetherness. It's a word which coins and frames the common issues and challenges which we had in the last years, and which we'll probably share in the future, be it the crisis of our institutions, be it border, migration crisis, be it the crisis of political representation, and so on and so on. The list is pretty much long. But we think, as representatives of the civil society, that those issues which we share here in the region and in the rest of Europe are pretty much the same. So that's why we, from the Erste Foundation and the European Fund for the Balkans, engaged this series of meetings, with the first one which took place in August last year in Vienna, and this being the follow-up meeting to discuss with renowned representatives, citizens, I would say worried citizens, topics which are of common interest and common concern.
We have here tonight a European crowd gathered in Belgrade, in Savamala, at the Mikser House, which has been described by The Guardian as Serbia's new creative hub. And we are basically in the epicentrum of the latest very active civil engagement provoked by some very strange activities in this very, very area. So I think it's the right place to discuss the citizens' engagement and the need for activism, voicing public concerns, providing public pressure, showing the civic protest against those issues which hamper the European values, which are on our way to develop real democracies in this region and in this very, very country.
So what is our goal or our contribution for tonight? We try to offer a stage for the civil society, a stage which will eventually enable a pluralistic dialogue, a discourse like it used to be in Europe, the same discourse which made Europe long time ago and which seems to be forgotten in these days and these months and weeks as we speak. It's an attempt to form and initiate and push for a new enthusiasm and a new energy coming from you, the very representatives of the civil society, you, the opinion makers and opinion leaders from your own communities. And as such, we have the great pleasure and honor to have 6 of them present and along with 2 special guests tonight. And I think we can go on the stage and kick off the discussion. I'll start clockwise from my right, and I'll just do a very short intro because I think most of you know who the people are on the stage. On my right is Mia David, being for a long time the director of the Belgrade Cultural Center, and as such coming from actually artistic background, studied architecture, and being one of the most renowned culture activists and education activists in Serbia. Edin Koljenovic, who's coming from the town where I was born, Podgorica, Montenegro, working for Civic alliances for a long time, political scientist who's been very much engaged in the field of youth education, especially in the build-up of the RICO network. Biljana Ginova, coming from Skopje, being one of the most foremost LGBT activists from Macedonia, and as such we have been discussing if we should tell her that she's an activist or not, but she definitely is, and as such today and these days, as the protests are going on in her home country, being one of the very vivid voices of protesting movement.
On my right side is Jehona Gjurgeala, who is the founder and executive director of TOKA. She's coming from Kosovo. Next to her is Dafina Peci, who is the president of the National Youth Congress and civil society representative of Albania for the RICO office. And Edin Hodzic is coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's a senior researcher and program director of the Analitica organization. Our special guest.
Yes, one of the two special guests, last but not least, is Ulrike Lunacek, Vice President of the European Parliament from the European Greens Party, and also for a long, long time, if I may not say decades, pronounced civil society activists in Austria and beyond, and as such being organizers and one of the foremost speakers for gender rights and LGBT rights, not only in Austria but now on European level, and especially being in charge in the European Parliament as a deputy for the Western Balkans affairs. And we are very, very happy and honored to have you with us tonight. Thank you for coming, and I may emphasize as well that you've been one of the foremost voices supporting our cause for a long time. Thank you. So, to go straight into the discussion, we have a question for all of the participants, and actually 3 questions which are quite simple, and we would most kindly ask you to answer them in the most simplest way, if it's possible within 1 minute, because we want to stick and go through many topics tonight. First question would be actually the triple question, is how do you describe the EU today, how would you describe the region, the Western Balkans today, and how would you describe your own home country today? So, I think we might start with Mia.
Hi, hello everybody. It's really not easy to be first one and to try to say something kind of clever. I don't need 2 minutes. For me, European Union today is disappointment. And how I see Balkans, like status quo. About my country, our country, I can say today that I am more proud than yesterday because of protests that we had yesterday. I see some kind of hope, let's say.
Thank you. Jehona.
We're jumping, okay.
Yes.
How do I see the EU today? I would describe it as silence before the storm. We've got Brexit at the doorstep, and I believe pretty soon the Greek debt restructuring will start again, and I'm not sure we've solved the refugee crisis. The Balkans, very easy to be pessimistic, but I would call it a land of opportunity, in fact. There's a lot of things that we need to fix. And I think that we've talked about energy, and I think with the right energy and focus and commitment, it can still move. Kosovo, I would describe it as not giving up against many odds. Again, very easy to be pessimistic and just give up and move on. But there are actually people that are still fighting to do a good job, and I think that is worth a mention. Is it enough? No. But is it there? Yes.
Thank you. Since we talking about Kosovo, we have here the rapporteur of the European Parliament. So, Ulrike, how do you see the situation in the EU in general, in the region? And please choose one or more countries.
I choose my own. Well, for the EU, we're at the crossroads. Either this European Union is going to fall apart, and everything that we struggled for since 1950s will be, well, not lost totally in history, but not moving forward anymore, or we manage to move ahead, form a stronger political union, and make sure that more Europe is not the problem but the solution. But we're far away from being there yet. So I still try to get some optimism for those of us who want to continue this struggle. For the Balkans, I feel there's lots of struggle on moving forward, lots of positive examples like this one here, like especially civil society connecting across borders, whichever ones we mean, territorial ones, those in our heads, those in our hearts, with lots of problems. And I think for the whole continent, the threat of nationalists, ethnically defined identities, etc., is a threat. And that leads me to my own home country, Austria, with presidential elections looming 10 days from now, where a decision might be going either back to some of the problems of the 20th century, the big ones, this specifically nationally anti-EU, ethnically defined states, or moving forward in the direction where I want my country to go, where I want all of Europe to go. Liberal, modern European democracies with all the values we've so long been struggling for.
Thank you. Dafina, how is the situation from the Tirana perspective?
Well, hello everybody, first of all. When it comes to my country, I would like to say that my country today will be tomorrow my children's country. So if we start to say it more and more, I think we will all see where we are and try to plan our steps where we want to go. About the Europe, I would describe it as a big house with small door and large windows. And about Balkans, I see it as a fatigue body that really needs to get up and move on.
Thank you. Edin, Hodzic, please.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I think Europe is obviously still a very good idea with many problems in its implementation. When it comes to the Balkans, I would say that that is what makes Europe an unfinished project in terms of democratization and consolidation. And when it comes to Bosnia, I would say that's a state that continues to exist despite the lack of consensus on its existence, forms of its existence and its future, and in that sense it resembles the EU in many ways, because we also internally have declarations, treaties, different actors sign treaties among themselves and so on. So we resemble Europe in many ways, and one of the features of our system is that everybody is happy to join the EU, and we understand why, because nobody knows what the EU stands for at the moment. So that's why they are able to actually come up with some kind of a consensus on something that is not clear anymore. So yeah, that's thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to maybe slightly more difficult case right now, Macedonia. Biljana, please.
I see you are looking at me.
Yeah.
Good evening from me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm quite nervous being on this event, so please be patient with me. Macedonia is in deep crisis with almost completely corrupted institutions, starting from local municipalities to the constitutional court, then facing the lack of freedom of media, freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and a hugely roughly violation of human rights. And then above all, we have abolition on 56 most corrupted criminals in the country. It is safe to say that we are driving on a fast track to raising into more direct autocratic politics in the country. As for EU, in this situation, I will refer to EU from the Macedonian point of view, is positioning themselves as a stabilizer in the situation, and maybe they should. But what we have seen in the recent history is the approach of quick fix and quick solution of going directly to stabilization and missing the second process, which should be in parallel way, and that is democratization. So my answer for EU would be they should be involved in the process, but to have more adequate strategy. And having in mind the local context, local narrative, and the history that we have. And as for the Balkans, I think the Balkans is facing also worsening of social economic situation. Also, we have worsening of the freedom of speech and freedom of media, and I think it is very important. Also, we have increasement of clientelistic society, and it is very important to mention that a message is sent to the Balkans from the EU in the progress reports must be rather clear and to the point than diplomatic, because of the lack of freedom of media. Mainly, the governments misuse them and promote successful reforms when they are not. We must not allow the Macedonian scenario to happen in other countries in the Balkans.
Thank you. Edin.
Thank you, Philip. As I'm the last in this circle, even though I share a lot of skepticism that exists here and my previous colleagues have expressed, I would like to say that even though today we really see that at a different level European Union is challenged by different challenges, I really would like to see European Union, and I see today still as the most important and the most successful European project that happened ever, which is very important for the Europe, which actually managed to achieve and preserve peace for more than 6 decades now in Europe, and I think that it is the baseline that we should all have in mind when having all this skeptic idea, especially in regard with young generation that actually do not know and do not feel the consequences of the wars. And actually this is the context where I would like to see the Western Balkans in the future, and this is peace. But unfortunately now I feel and I see that the Balkans are still overdosed with stereotypes, prejudice, divisions at different levels, and which is very dangerous, very high level of ethnic distance between nations. And this is what really burdens the processes of institutional reforms and regional cooperation. And as for mine and Philip's Montenegro, I would like to say one sentence that Montenegro is a small country, beautiful country really, but I always like to say small democracy. That is what is really important to understand the context of Montenegrin democracy, which is practicing democracy until 1989, anti-bureaucratic revolution that happened in Montenegro, and until then, for 26 years, almost 27 years now, hasn't felt the democratic change of power, with still one composition of ruling government for 26, almost 27 years, which is very important thing and fact to actually understand the context of democracy in Montenegro. Thank you.
Thank you, Edin.
If we speak about democratic consolidation in the Western Balkans, we basically speak about the European future of the Western Balkans, because this process is very much linked to the EU accession process. Ivan Krastev said a few years ago that the EU perspective might have lost its magic for the region, but it didn't lose its importance. It was some 5-6 years ago. Since then, it is very questionable what leverage still the EU has in the region, and how this process is really going on in the everyday life of the region and of the people of the region. Some year ago, 2 years ago, a group of analysts, the Balkans and Europe Policy Advisory Group, published a report analyzing 4 possible scenarios for the European future of the Western Balkans. And there we had a scenario which we called business as usual, which means that this process, this gradual process of a slow approach to EU membership is continuing. Then we had a second scenario called the Turkish scenario, which basically means that without tangible prospect of membership, a country starts giving up on the goal of accession. Then we had a third, a bit unfortunate name for a scenario called the Ukrainian scenario, meaning that accession becomes unlikely due to continued internal crisis and opposition to further enlargement develops while alternative actors might become engaged in that country. And then we had a fourth, the only optimistic scenario, which we call the Big Bang scenario, which would mean acceleration of the process, and instead of increased conditionality, focus on the acquis and open accession talks with all the countries of the Balkans. Well, I think that one of the basic conclusions nowadays is that the EU can no longer afford to rely on business as usual, because this approach is not delivering. So my first set of questions would go to Ulrike Lunacek, and then I would like to ask you to comment on what you find especially interesting for you or important. Is the EU losing the Western Balkans? That would be my first question. Then the second is, what could be a new EU strategy for the Balkans in the given circumstances, taking in account the crisis in the EU and the situation in the region? And who are the real friends of enlargement today?
Okay. Well, first of all, before I forget, I'd like to say I'm really glad we're here today, because when I was here half a year ago, 3/4 of a year, I wasn't so sure whether I would be able to be here again in the Mikser House and all of that. So I'm glad I'm still here and it still exists. So thank you all who are struggling for that. But to your questions, Hedvig. The first one, whether the EU is losing the Balkans. Yes, there is the danger that is happening. And we're far away from anything like the Saloniki decision, 13 years ago. We're far away, and that's your third question, that we have many struggling for enlargement. There are very few of us who do that in a proactive form. So yes, the danger is there, but it doesn't have to do as much with the Balkans, but with the situation of the EU internally. And I'm talking about member states that are going away from European values, Hungary, Poland, others following suit, from the lack of solidarity when it comes to the distribution of refugees, for, yes, increasing, well, as I said before, nationalist, anti-EU parties, pushing further to the right and some even extreme right, which makes many of the governments and the ruling parties with the idea that if they move further to the right as well, then they will not lose as many votes. The problem is the contrary happens. The right-wing populists and extremists are strengthened and the center parties lose out. So in this situation, the Balkans are seen as further away, even in those countries like mine, where we have lots of people from the region living there from the 1960s and then with the wars. Yeah? So this I find that really, how should I say, I find it not just problematic, I find it, maybe that sounds a bit too emotional or something. For me, without the Western Balkans, all the 6 countries becoming part of the European Union, the European peace project will not be fulfilled. When it started with the principle of cooperation instead of confrontation. That's why Germany and France don't fight wars anymore, and all the others. So this for me still is somewhere up there, but it's lost in everyday life, unfortunately. Now, when it comes to which perspectives there are, I'm afraid the most probable, and that might be even the better one in comparison to the Turkish and the Ukrainian model, is continuing with business as usual. at a very slow pace, but a bit progress here, a bit there, maybe not as much in some countries pushing forward. What I would like to see would be something like this, what you said, Big Bang. I don't really see it happen, but I find that also, but you will tell me whether that's true for all of you, I think a kind of new push for a new motivation would be helpful, because there are others who want to have some more influence in the region, further east, further southeast, so for me, often when I argue with some of those government people and others also in the European Parliament who are going, let's go slowly, let's see, it's, well, if we want especially citizens and not to lose people, then we have to move forward. One last sentence. As much as I defend enlargement with the Western Balkans, I find it difficult to imagine that it can happen without the European Union becoming more deeper and the deeper political union. Because what we see now with unanimity decisions among 28 in some areas, I mean, this is, you cannot work like that in a democracy. And I say that coming from a smaller party, where often we don't get majorities, but that in a democracy, that's how it is. But if you can have one that says no, and none of the others can do it, I mean, this is no way to work. So for me, that has to go side by side.
I would add one more question related to this. So in the middle of these ongoing crises, which are happening, the economic crisis and now the refugee crisis, and this very challenging neighborhood around the EU, what would be now the arguments for answering the question, like, why should the EU care for Macedonia, for example, in the middle of this entire chaos elsewhere and in the middle of the European Union?
Because simply speaking, this is Europe, and if we don't want more chaos here, then we better also care about the Balkans. And I would like to come back to one thing Biljana raised that I find extremely important. One of the big mistakes I have found in the past that the European Union and member states have been doing over decades before, especially like with Northern Africa, looking into stability and not into democratization. And that must not be the idea for the Balkans and elsewhere, because then it's stability that goes at the price of human rights, of participation of citizens believing that this is my country and I can do something to change it.
So then I would like to ask you to react on this. Do you think that the EU will engage itself in solving the crisis in Macedonia?
Well, yes, as I already said, they are already engaging in solving the crisis in Macedonia, but I would like to emphasize what Ms. Ulrike said. The last thing is being aware that the citizens should be involved in the process while solving, because in the past we haven't seen that awareness from the side of EU, because and that's why I mentioned the history in the past. Our history comes from an autocratic politics, and we were not taught to be critical thinkers and critical political actors in the society. And now we are facing a chance to transform that culture and to introduce more real participatory in the politics by the citizens, and that should be recognized by EU and involved in the process. And when I say citizens, I don't mean citizens represented by political parties or citizens represented by CSOs. I mean citizens. When you see 5 or 10 or 15,000 people, citizens protesting on the street or having plenums, those demands must be considered as a person sitting on the table without asking them to appoint leaders or representatives to sit on the table.
Thank you. Who feels provoked by what we heard so far or by any of these questions?
Well,
Also, the inside crisis that European Union is facing nowadays, I think that is still attractive because it's the only project that promotes a kind of economical, stability, and also trying to include the social aspect. And that's what I think is the problem with this part of, or with this region. In the process of EU integration, it is focused more on the governments of integration ministry, parliamentarian groups, and not spread it up to the people, to the citizens, not touching the social cohesion, the social aspects. What are the needs of the people of this country? How do they see things? We have many differences in this region, but also similarities. So really it should put more work, more time, more money in building capacities in civil society. Not necessarily CSOs, but maybe in interest groups, maybe in people that share common interests and want to develop common issues. And also, it's not like achievement to put in a table citizens, civil society representatives and governments. Achievement is to put these two groups in the process. They should work together. But maybe we will have more time to mention some good examples, but that's what I think it's necessary to think about the social cohesion or a new social model for Western Balkans.
This tackled me the question, is the EU losing the Western Balkans? I think it's very important, and I really feel it could lose in the future, but now still I think that European Union is attractive for Western Balkans. There is still this aspect of carrot that European Union is offering to Western Balkans, and when you look to political elites in the region, really it is still, like main topic, strategic direction, etc. But what I would like to also say, that is impression from my own countries, and we know that during the accession process all the member states have faced the decreasement of the support towards European Union. At the end, at the very date of the referendum, and when they are like becoming a member states, the lowest is percentage of the support towards European Union. And this is in Montenegro right now. You have all parliamentary parties that are pro-European, so it is consensus among all parliamentary parties. And when you ask citizens, it is around 70% of support towards European Union integration, and this is huge percent. But when you ask the same citizens, do they understand what European Union is, or what European integration process is bringing to them? Do they know what the opening or closing of negotiation chapters means? They do not know. So if we have this context in mind, that the European integration process and European Union values are not good communicated with the citizens, then I think that it's very dangerous that transmission of Euroscepticism could happen to this kind of population, which is huge in our countries.
I can represent skepticism, I think. I don't believe that we would live better under European Union. I believe that we are part of Europe, and because of that we should be part of European Union. But I feel now, I have to say, like, how to say that? Like when you have some very good party and you're waiting for that for months, and then you're so late and you're coming with some uncool friends, let's say, I mean, of course, our government. And then everybody at that party are already drunk and there is no food, and you're left totally alone with leftovers, and you're asking yourself why at the first place you wanted to be there, because you don't even belong there. And I have to say that now I think that Europe is losing its own core values, and that's the biggest problem. Without those values, I'm really not interested to be part of Europe that has treatment like this to refugees, for example.
We heard a lot of talk about alleged trade-off between widening and deepening the European Union, and we also saw some empirical studies showing that actually the widening of the European Union brought about the strengthening of the European institutions. So this is a trend that could actually continue with the new enlargement. When it comes to the four scenarios, I don't think there's only four. I think there's millions of combinations of different scenarios, and I would just like to emphasize that conditionality is really important if we want to achieve change in some important areas, and especially in those areas in which domestic political elites have no real incentive to actually reform, like fight against corruption, rule of law, reform of the judiciary even. The process is paradoxical in many ways. EU must condition and demand, but at the same time attract and lead by example. Also, there's only carrots. There's no meaningful sticks. Because sanctions will only make things worse in the Balkans. So I would like to emphasize that it's really important to continue with this constructivist institutionalism of the EU accession in terms of institution building and state building. And when it comes to possible new strategy, I think some kind of a smaller bang, not a big bang, maybe some kind of a regional approach with a more elaborate regional approach with sensitivity to local specificities. For example, overcome this nation-state bias, be sensitive to maybe multi-nation building processes that we are witnessing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, or maybe even Kosovo.
I hope that Philip will allow me one more question. I was provoked by what you were saying. I think it's obvious that if we ever join the European Union, it is going to be a quite different European Union than what we started negotiating with at some point. So, do you think that there are already some clear visions about a new European project, what they could be one day? Or it is still very blurry? Whoever thinks.
Since I haven't had a chance, I'll connect onto this and what I wanted to say. Just a bit of context. I returned relatively recently from about 8 years of living in Copenhagen and London, so I know actually how in these countries, in old Europe, if you like, people don't appreciate how fragile peace is. And at the same time, coming from the Balkans, I think we all appreciate how fragile it is. And when you talk about this solution, I don't know if it's a solution. I think it's in my interest as a Kosovar or as a person from the Western Balkans to really insist, please look at us, please look at us, please don't forget us. I think if I am actually thinking of the greater good of all of us, I think we need to be a little bit patient actually and just be grown up for a little while and understand that if you guys within the European Union right now don't solve these immediate issues that are there won't be any that peace and prosperity, a stable, durable prosperity for neither of us. And I think if I would say that there is a model, I don't know if it's a model, but I would say two things. Please get your house in order. And I know it's easier said than done. And for us, I think we just need to just be a little bit more grown up. And I think there's a risk because nature abhors a vacuum. And I don't think we can wait indefinitely. And I think the East and the Southeast and everything else can come creeping in. But keep it going. I think business as usual, we can hold up for a little bit longer. And for the sake of all of us, we're rooting for you to get through this.
It could be interesting, though, to see how the Western Balkans could contribute to ensuring a new security and a new positive development within the EU, obviously.
I'd like to comment on that as well, because, the one thing that you just said now, the last one, and then I'll get back to you, Hedvig, is, yes, in the sense of contributing, it would be great, yeah, if the 6+ plus the others in the region, yeah, those who are inside the EU already, if there could be like a common approach on sort of telling us who have been in there longer, and my own home country has only been there for a bit more than 20 years, so it's not that long ago, but still, sort of telling them that this region is important for all of Europe, yeah, and not just that, but for all of Mediterranean and Middle East, etc. But that only can be done if you do it together, yeah. If there's like some kind of theoretically speaking, yeah, because if just one and the other says that, yes, it is small countries, relatively speaking, yeah, Serbia being the biggest one, but still, it's like, if there would be something of all of you together saying, look, we together want that, and we need that, and we don't need it just for ourselves, but we need it for all of Europe, that might have some kind of influence. The other part, yes, I have my very clear picture of how the EU could function better, structurally speaking, and also how we could get some more political will together. Yeah, the one thing is the structures. It's very clear. Abolish the council. I mean, those of you. Not really. I mean, member states, governments, who should be or who are executive at home, doing what their legislative bodies, parliaments decide. At the EU level, making laws for themselves together with us in the parliament, this simply is non-division of power. Yeah? This shouldn't be like that. So the easiest thing would be, I mean, theoretically speaking, putting them in a second chamber, second parliamentary chamber, with two, like a Senate, and then majority decisions or qualified majority. That idea has been there for 15 years, yeah? But tell them to abolish themselves. It's not an easy job to do. And that just would be the structures. And then a fully fledged European Parliament, yeah? With legislative powers. The other part is the political will. And there, I mean, in general, I'm an optimist, and I do see a chance with the crisis we have now. And I don't call it refugee crisis, I call it crisis of solidarity. Yeah. And all the financial issues that are still around, and with Brexit, whatever it's going to be, or not be, yes or no, and member states drifting off. For me, it would be a good idea to have some sort of courageous leaders from the parliament and others to call some kind of a new convention with lots of citizens participating, and in a participative process, yeah? And I'm not an illusionist, yeah? I mean, I know this is not easy, but trying to get some of the ideas that have been around for decades almost, yeah? How a new structure could look like, a new structure, and how you can get some political will about a more social Europe, a more ecological, all of those issues that many of us have been fighting for. It's still there. Some of us are thinking about it, and I think we are, as I said at the beginning, we are at a crossroads. We will have to decide which way to go. Yeah, either break up or do something new. I hope it'll be something new.
But talking from contribution, going a step further to participation, I would like to ask all of you, as I see you as participants or you're all representatives of the civil society, but I see you today or tonight as single individuals, citizens. And in the very end, each civil society is organized by individuals and interest groups, and those individuals form different kind of actions, and they most of the time turn out to be actions of solidarity, which we do lack apparently in many parts of Europe these days. But in the end, it have been individuals like Mia or Biljana who were helping refugees on their way to the EU member states. There have been many individuals in Vienna, like Train of Hope people standing for months at the train stations in Vienna and supporting refugees with their basic needs. As we all know, we need energy for this kind of support, and energy is coming, energy is not endless. Energy is somehow always tending to have an end, or a beginning of an end, and as we know, there have been certain energies in these societies, like in Belgrade in 2000, in Kosovo in 2007, and so on and so on. There have been certain peaks, and different times, which required different measures and approaches of the civil societies to solve problems. So where do all of you see the energy to tackle the challenges of today? Because as we know, as we have seen in Austria as well, the energy of the civil society, it was a very resilient cycles, starting in September, and then we had a peak, I think, in November on, and then as the government basically turned with their policy towards the refugees, it was also a sense of feeling that the energy in the society changed. So how do you see it on your personal level? You can tell it maybe from your personal experiences, because many of you have been involved directly in talking about migration, but it relates also to all the other fields of human interaction. So
I can start. First of all, I was not involved in, let's say, refugee crisis as activist, just as normal citizen. But I think that, there is lack of energy in general in Serbia, and that's why that protest yesterday was so important. It's still far away from something serious, but for the first time we gathered a few thousand people, and I think it was really some very nice people were there. So there is something, but I think that before we start to collect our energy, we actually have to act as individuals, and I think that that's something that every one of us should do every day. I'm now teaching, and I think it's actually the probably most important job that I ever had, because I'm constantly talking about politics to my students. And I think that no matter what are you teaching, and I'm teaching art, you can always put everything in a wider context. And I think it's extremely important for them to be able to make decisions. I'm not expecting them to have the same decisions or values or whatever like I have. I'm just trying to teach them to ask questions. And I think that is the start to collect energy for some movement. Because now in Serbia, like you all know, it's really very big apathy in general.
I think it's not only in Serbia, so do the others feel somehow...
Very short, and to come back very short for what Ms. Lunacek said about what Western Balkans could do, and to be together and to send strong message to European Union what they need actually and how do they feel to have solution. Actually, usually always it is happening in the different directions. Always we are waiting for the European partners, European countries to support us, and that is where I connect the source of energy. Unfortunately, this has been in the process of reforms and the work of the civil society organization. Whenever we fight to solve some issues at national level, local level, it is tackled only when internationals, European Commission or partners from European Union, Germany or France are putting some more light into it. So unfortunately, this has been the energy which we're driving for to resolve problems. And now when the European Union is stuck in all of these challenges and problems, it is questionable what will be the energy in the future period if they will not have enough focus on the reforms in more in-depth manner. And to very briefly tackle the perspective of European Union, I really feel that the Council is showing the readiness to demonstrate the power over other EU institutions, and I think that definitely if the European Union wants to survive, there should be this division of powers and decreasing of the councils, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you. Biljana, you raised, because, I think Biljana, and then we can go over to Dafina, because I see there is a lot of energy coming from you, basically under the chair you're sitting, so please.
I come from the street, maybe that's why.
Most likely. Please.
I would like to add an aspect. And who are those new agents of change? Because evidently we need new people. I mean, we are in constant crisis for so many years. We need some new people now with new energy.
Very good question. It's like original for protestiram on the street. I think the energy comes from the rage from all these years, oppression and complete violation of human rights on every level. People are dehumanized in Macedonia, and the institutions are not working. People are literally hostages of few most powerful people, and that rage come to the point. I remember last year, 5th of May, when the huge protest happened. That rage comes to the point when you cannot yell, you cannot speak anymore, you cannot point out this is wrong in the society or this is wrong. We acted, and that was the first time thousands of people to enter into governmental yard and to liberate it in a way, not occupy it, but liberate it and take it to themselves. I'm saying this in picture, but in reality, I'm on the street protesting since 2011, and I see the increasement of politicized language among people. So people are getting more and more involved in politics, even though we have witnessed a decade, even more, of labeling of everybody who is interested in politics, of building bipolar, bipartisan society. One is governmental political party, and all the rest who are criticizing are labeled that are from the opposition party. Then everybody who is critical in public is labeled as Sorosoid or foreign servant or etc., etc. And they presented politics as something dirty or something that only politicians can, be victims and sacrifice for all of us and deal with the politics. The politics was in this process taken away from the citizens. And in this protest last year and this year, we see how the citizens get the politics back. And every day I'm on the street and I spend the protest talking with different citizens. Everybody is with different reason on the street. For everybody, the reason is different. There is not only the abolition that happened. It's not only the huge corruption. It's not only the elections that are upcoming. For everybody, it's different, and there comes the energy. I don't know. I'm hoping this will increase in the future to more critical mass of citizens. They can introduce the new change. I think I had something more to say, but I now forget it. Maybe later.
I think Dafina, you wanted to add something, right?
If we don't have time, then it's okay.
No, we
okay.
do have.
I don't want to repeat what my colleagues say. I agree with them, but I just want to mention what a politician, a great writer in 1936 in my country wrote. In Albania, he said, "We don't have young people and old people. We have people that got born in a moment and some others that got born later. People here do not have enthusiasm." I can understand for that year, but I don't understand to be the same situation in nowadays. I think that to work and to organize and to have energy, you must try to feel young. And if there is a set or a strong point that is possessed from each of the countries of Western Balkans 6, is that our youngsters, young generation, young people, they have the capacity to feel motivated, and if they have an aim, they are willing to work on that. I cannot stay without mentioning, and also my colleague here, Edin, we are both engaged in one process that is very important for us, the establishment of Regional Youth Corporation Office. For us it was a very important process because the first thing, it brings together in the process civil society representatives and also governmental representatives. And second thing, try to promote bridges and not separation between youngsters in Western Balkans. It's very important for us to get to know each other and our context and our history, and not to have prejudice. And feeling this kind of motivation, and also knowing other friends from other countries and getting to know each other and have the commitment to work together, it's a big energy. Because if you have it in one country, it's a different thing. But if you can feel it in 2 countries, 3, 4, 5, in the whole region, it's totally another picture. So one maybe
one thing that I can say is that try to feel young and motivated to go for it.
Thank you. So we had the very diverse reflections on this question, from being young as one of the urges, from repression, as one of the cores of any kind of energy coming from the society, up to the situation which Mia framed in Belgrade, where total apathy is sometimes being substituted by spontaneous protests.
Well, somehow it seems to me that backsliding of democracy is connecting people, and unfortunately, we might even say that it even regionally connects people, as we could make some parallels between the developments in certain countries in the region, unfortunately. Of course, also corruption connects people. Criminals are very successfully connected all over the region. They were even very successfully cooperating during war times. So the issue of regional cooperation has been always there. Obviously, it was in one context in the past period. It is in a completely new context now. And I myself, because I'm involved in regional cooperation and I work regionally for many years, I sometimes think that everyone is cooperating regionally, and of course it's not the truth. So I would like to ask you for your judgment, if you could grade the level and the success of regional cooperation, because it's everywhere. I mean, you can listen about it, and it's not that obvious many times what it really means and in which areas it's really visible and successful. Now even the Berlin process, in which context we are here today, meaning that we are linked with this public discussion to the civil dimension of the Berlin process in a way. Even the Berlin process is there to foster further regional cooperation in certain areas. So if you have a scale from 1 to 10, how would you grade regional cooperation in the Western Balkans today? Of course, you can maybe choose one of the policy areas, maybe culture or economics or whatever, or to give a general impression on how you see it develops.
I think on the level of civil society, it's quite good. On the governmental level, it's not good at all. And I think that's the main problem. If you're part of those circles, then everything is easy. I mean, civil society, we are very well connected, and actually, yes, we are doing things together, we have same issues and things like that. But when you raise things on a governmental level, then everything stops. That is my feeling. And I think that all are, I mean, I don't know, but certainly from this side, they are not interested in regional cooperation. Really not interested.
Yeah, you see, it's very interesting, as there are even jokes circulating nowadays saying that our ministers and prime ministers meet their colleagues from the region more often than they meet their colleagues from their own cabinets, basically. And when it comes to the citizens, they do not see any concrete results out of it. They even see or think that they are opposite to regional cooperation. So it's really interesting.
Yes, I would like to say that I really share this impression that they meet very often, but what actually are the concrete results? And is this cooperation sustainable? Is it sincere, or is just pushed from the other side? And you mentioned Berlin process. It's the most important now for the Western Balkan region. But how it started? It started because Germans said, "Okay, guys from the Balkans, you should sit now together and think about infrastructure projects, think about energy projects, and etc." And this is how it started. And when we are pushed, then we are working it. So yeah, this is how it happens, unfortunately. But the things are happening, the processes are happening. If it has to be like that still, then it is okay. And this is how happened a very important process and one of the first concrete things within the Berlin process, and that is the establishment of Regional Youth Cooperation Office, which my colleague mentioned, which was very important. And again, it was based on very good principles, composed of representatives of civil society organizations and government from 6 countries. So 12, actually 13, 3 from Bosnia and Herzegovina, 13 people from with different backgrounds, political backgrounds, civil society organizations who were gathered around the same values, and that is to build future international organization which will foster the cooperation. So the outcome after the 3 months of the work of this working group were very concrete documents that were sent to the governments. But what happened then? After the end of the working group, we felt that nothing happens again, because the documents are sent to the ministries of foreign affairs and to cabinets. They need to agree upon very important political questions like finances and etc. and other. So we recognize that there is a lack of coordination between government and what is most important within the government itself. The papers were stuck somewhere else, and that is where the civil society has its role, to actually provide dialogue, to actually provide space to discuss about the challenges and to push governments to meet. And again, this happened with help of French government, which is organizing the next summit, because they were someone who could listen our demands or what we are actually want to happen in next period, and that is actually to have this agreement signed for July in Paris. Just an example and impression what happened very concretely regarding the regional cooperation, how it functioned when it goes to the level of the governments when they are not pushed. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe follow up on it. For me, when I thought about when you say like on the scale from 1 to 10, I was like, my impression also is, even though there are lots of meetings like on government level, but it is, as you say, something being pushed. There's more interest in looking at what is Brussels saying, or what is London or Paris or Vienna or Berlin or whoever saying, or maybe Moscow for some, or I don't know, but no, but or others in the wherever, but there is still, I find, a lack of willingness. And that's where the Berlin process was good, to look like infrastructure. I mean, I love traveling by train, yeah? Try, yeah? From, I don't know, one part of go somewhere else. When I was young, during Yugoslav times, there was a direct train from Vienna to Belgrade. With the car, we went with my parents, the car was on the train, and we went to Belgrade and then on somewhere to Greece, yeah? That doesn't work right now, yeah? And things like that, there I feel there's still lack of cooperation. There is a lot at civil society level, at cultural level, all of that, yeah? And that is important, yeah? Because that keeps people sort of connecting, yeah? But at government level, yes, I also feel a lot more should be done. Yeah.
So it seems, yes, we need regional cooperation, but we need more European cooperation.
Yes, definitely, and we need it on many layers. As I've mentioned in my intro, we face the same challenges, the same issues, the same problems. We had a meeting of different policy experts this morning, and we've discussed many topics, and I think I started to annoy some people because I was getting in to repeat one key principle which I deeply believe could somehow trigger some changes, and we actually called it, it's not something I coined, but a term which I picked up, and it's called the new togetherness. Basically, is it possible for you as opinion leaders in your respective environments, in your countries, and you as an opinion leader in the European Parliament, is it possible maybe to agree on a new set of mechanisms? Let's call them mechanisms, or call them tools, or whatever, or instruments, in a way that we could maybe not only talk about the gaps and differences between our region, our countries, ourselves, and Europe, or the developed parts of Europe, but rather to focus on a new narrative, a new story of things which bring us actually much closer together than things that divide us. And in that context, I may remind all of you here, it's this kind of, to be concrete, to give a concrete example, it is exactly this kind of feeling when you go to, I don't know, when you go to Prishtina, or you go to Sarajevo, or where you go to Novi Sad, and meet somebody who immediately somehow gets you into a discussion in a feeling of which gives you a feeling that you're at home. For example, like last night when I came to Novi Sad, one of the first discussions I had with an old friend was, where are the best Schwarze in Novi Sad? So, yeah. It's the same when I go to Prishtina. It's the first thing when I ask, where do I get the best pastries? And Jehona usually knows it. And it's the sense of agency which we had in back old Yugoslav times, or in Albanian times as well. The sense that we belong to a common entity. We have a very good example in Podgorica these days. Some of you who might have heard, there was an 11-year-old kid who ran away from home. And basically the whole city, the whole country stood up and is now searching for 9 days, consecutive days, for the kid. And there are many examples. As we speak, things do happen, and unfortunately they don't make it up to the media. But I think, is there a way for us to agree, even maybe within this civil society forum series, or this Berlin process, or whatever other initiative, is there a way to agree on this kind of togetherness and think in a more positive way than in a way of division?
Again, I'm going to use my experience of living abroad for so many years and coming back to the Balkans. And yes, I do believe that in the Balkans we have a lot more in common than we have differences. And I think once we kind of overcome these immediate barriers of meeting the other, we gel, we get on with it, and we get on together. However, I think we can't be too complacent about it, honestly. And I think in particular, and I don't want to pull out a national card, but there is an objective language barrier, particularly between Albanian and the other Slavic languages. And it's not to be underestimated. I got over my sort of issues of the others in the 90s, where actually, as the war in Bosnia hadn't even finished yet, we were meeting each other. And that time, you know, guys from Serbia were bringing plasma keksa, and the guys from Croatia were bringing kikis, and because nobody was exchanging anymore. And that was, we had common points that we reignited, and it was very easy. A lot of that doesn't exist anymore. And I think, for me, one of the best things, or one of the biggest potentials that I see right now is Rajko. But I work with young people, and I've been trying to reach out and have more regional cooperation. Absolutely cannot be underestimated how it kicks off and it runs itself quite naturally once you facilitate it. It doesn't happen by accident. There's not that many opportunities still. We're talking, this is a very young region, and most people don't have an experience of togetherness beyond, frankly, their high school, okay? And I believe that there is a lot more work to be done in this regard. And I really wish Rajko to be a success, and as civil society actors, I think we can certainly be more active. It has been quite a quiet process. So the great work you guys have been doing, that I would have chased up as a civil society organization working with young people, I can't chase something I don't know that's happening. So I think we also need to get better at cooperating. But in a nutshell, yes, we can do more. Absolutely can't take it for granted. Language is an objective issue, and facilitating, creating these platforms is something that we need to beef up, accelerate, increase. But once we get there, once we have the platform, absolutely, we really have a lot more in common than we have differences.
Thank you. I think language is also one of the key obstacles in creating a common European cultural space, unfortunately. For
I think Biljana,
and Dafina.
yes, has something to say, and Dafina, and I do see that there is some energy under some of the chairs in the audience, so they might have some comments or questions as well.
Thank you. Togetherness, yes, I agree completely. But I'd like to try to answer on the last 2-3 questions in 1 or 2 sentences. You are talking about the political unity of European Union, and that is very important. I believe in that. And Macedonian crisis now is disturbing that political unity, with or without being a member of the Union. What I want to emphasize is that Macedonian case is not unique. It's obvious replication of non-democratic processes that we see with Erdogan, with Orban, and now we also see it with Vučić here. And what I want to talk about is togetherness, but in a sense of political awareness and political will to, for example, now in Macedonia, it's an example that should be sanctioned adequately, not to be a role model for Vučić in Serbia, to be stopped. That kind of non-democratic or tendency to autocratic societies must be stopped. And that's what we need to learn from the neighbors. Not only platforms, formal or informal, not only network on governmental, intergovernmental or society levels, that's for sure, yes. But also to have political awareness, not to replicate the same not democratic politics.
Dafina.
About regional cooperation and how much it's needed, it's all said, so it's better if we leave the floor to the others to ask.
Mia.
I also think it's a little bit generational thing, because I'm old enough. I was born in Yugoslavia and I was raised under those values of brotherhood and equality. And I have to say I still live that. And I think my culture space is where I speak our language. But I'm fully aware that when we speak, that you're speaking my language. And this is that's that obstacle between, let's say, us. But I really think for my generation, it's still not really, although we of course know borders and respect our countries, culturally this is one space. I mean, with small differences, but in general, I think yes, maybe not for you.
Edin.
Just to follow up on this issue of regional cooperation, I would give it a 5, maybe, because I'm generous. Because I think there's out of 10, because there's a lot of problems, obviously, in this region, unresolved issues from the past, and so on, and also the very concept of regional cooperation is not very straightforward, because there is a tension between regional cooperation and very competitive individual race towards the European Union, and also there's a difference in understanding regional cooperation. For example, is regional cooperation a precondition for EU integration, or EU integration is a way actually to strengthen states' position in relation to their neighbors, which happens, for example, when states enter the EU. For example, we know the disputes between Slovenia and Croatia, we know the disputes between Croatia and Bosnia in terms of trade, and so on. So that's not a straightforward issue. It's not clear what we mean by regional cooperation at all. So when it comes to potential new togetherness, I would say that the question of what do we have in common on both sides of the fence, I would say, is really relevant, I would say. And it's probably never been a better moment to emphasize this common anti-fascist legacy. In Europe and especially in the Balkans, I would say, and the idea of overcoming the history of grave violence, which is obviously more recent in the Balkans. And also the second part of this potential new togetherness is, as someone who believes in the notion of thin institutional identity, I think there's several important institutions that we all can relate to. For example, as a lawyer, I would emphasize the European Court of Human Rights that we all can appeal to, and we do sometimes.
Ulrike.
You just, this thing with togetherness, and I think what has come up with some of you, I mean, one of the principles also of this what has been built in the European Union, and what I think is one of the good things, is this good neighborly relationships, which is something like regional cooperation, in a sense, that in this process towards the EU, you also have to learn how to live with your neighbors, yeah? I mean, or how to also connect to them, which between some is easier than with others, I know, yeah? And I'd like to just give one example, one thing that also, because you talked about civil society to governments. I find, having been a parliamentarian now since 1999, which makes it what, how many years? 17? Wow. Anyway, I find that parliaments should be also spaces where they can provide sort of a space for civil society and governments to listen to each other, sort of with parliaments in between, because that's what I think, having been parliamentarian for this long time, is a space that can be used as well, and that parliamentarians can also offer, to be the place where people meet. And I'd just like to give one very good example that I like a lot, that was started between women parliamentarians from Kosovo and from Serbia. Yeah? This process where they met and started to talk about their issues as women in politics, in society, violence, all of that, and sort of not to talk about the problems all the time, but connect at that level. And they made this film, very nice one, supported by OSCE, about how they met and continue to work. And they now have an exchange program for, I think, 50 young women from both countries who move to the other one, sort of to learn. It's called Follow Us. Things like that, really make change, and make positive change. And if you have a connection to each other, you can also talk about the difficult past at one moment, But connecting at a level where you can connect is extremely important and helps to overcome the problematic parts.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think now it's time.
Is there an urgent question or comment coming from the floor? I will look at that side and Philip will look at this
and I'll
side.
stand up, which is quite difficult for a Montenegrin, but I think it's better overview. Yeah.
There and there.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Rambo Amadeus. I come from Prishtina. And I were wondering to ask you, because everyone were excited to say that we need new energies to solve all our problems that you mentioned. But do you believe that this old class of politicians are ready for this new energies? Do you believe that it's time to change all this political class to follow the example of Estonia, and maybe we can do something for better? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I may, I have more of a comment and a contribution, maybe then a question. Tanya from the Balkan Civil Society Development. Two things from the beginning, and I'll try to be short. All facts point that there is zero or no negative effects from enlargement, at least what we have seen in academic research so far. So what I think we need to do in the EU, and we need to change narratives, if not change the mentality and the concept. And this is what civil society is best, all of the Balkans problems are EU's problems. The lack of democracy, who are the elites in EU responsible to whose interests are they serving if you go in deep and analyze. It's the same type of issue that we are facing today in Skopje, in Belgrade, in Prishtina, etc. So we should stop thinking about it as EU and the Balkans. It's European problems, and actually I think European colleagues and EU can really learn a lot from us in their facts. But we need to use facts, and we need to change narratives and concept. First in our heads as civil society, and then and talk about it, because facts work for us and speak to us. There is no negative effects. The enlargement policy has been the most effective and successful policy EU has ever had. With regards to the new developments in our countries, I like the colorful revolution in Macedonia. I'm very much under the impression, because I live and work in Skopje, although working on regional cooperation is we as more, I think, together here in this setting now, we come people, both activists, but predominantly people from think tanks, from organized civil society organizations. What is crucial for us is now, how do we get that change, that energy that moves and shakes and change narratives and concepts and raise awareness and make citizens more political about issues like corruption, etc., and can shake the political class that the colleague mentioned, not just one party, the whole political class, and how do we make it a perpetual, permanent change? How do we structure that it influences permanently? because we need to look closely what's happening in Croatia. That's a reminder, a sad reminder, what can happen once you enter the EU and there is no strict conditionality anymore. There is no reversibility, unfortunately. And it's the keys in the citizens. How do we get that perpetual, this ignition that we now have, for example, in Skopje, and how do we catalyze it? How do we help it? And we really need to change, because we should not underestimate the power and the importance of informal civil society, not just us as the professional ones, but actually, because that's the key to development of our society, perpetual development of our civil society.
Thank you. Another question there.
Actually, it's not a question. I'm Donika, I'm a media researcher at Kosovo Center for Security Studies. I wanted to talk about regional cooperation because I've been recently engaged in projects tackling regional cooperation in the security sector. And when you ask a question about regional cooperation, you should be very clear and specific in what aspects and in what fields. Because, for example, if you talk about regional cooperation in the security sector, you see that there is a lack of cooperation. I mean, my colleague from BCSP is here. We have been implementing projects focusing on police cooperation between Kosovo and Serbia, or regional cooperation in the defense and security sector. And then you see that there is lack of cooperation, and mostly because the existing cooperation is mostly driven by the EU. It's such an artificial force that is actually pushing the countries to cooperate just for the sake of getting some carrots to move towards the EU and NATO processes, but not actually a force deriving organically from the states for the sake of their citizens and for the sake of having a sound cooperation. And until we have this organically driven force coming from the countries itself, we will not have a sound cooperation. I'm referring mostly to the security sector, because there are some cultural aspects and others in which we obviously have developed and progress so far. And yeah, this is pretty much it. And I wanted to add something more about regional cooperation, but then I will just give the floor to the others. I will not take too long.
Yeah, well, I think that these are more comments than questions. So I don't really think that now we have to reply to all of them. If someone feels the need to comment on something what we heard, then we can go back to the panel. And yes, please.
Quickly, because I think my compatriot made an interesting question, and is the political class ready? Honestly, I would say the real question is, do we have to keep on fighting? Nobody, not even arguably any of us, it's a nature of human nature that we like to sit comfortably, and we will fight for the right to sit comfortably. And I don't think we should expect them to very easily give up on their privileges and their power. Again, do I like it? No. Do I understand it? Yes. And instead of wishing them to have a different nature from what they have, I focus on how I can, I'm speaking in terms of my philosophy, and I believe that if we as civil society just think about what we can do for our country, we just need to keep on, keep at it, actually. Just keep at it with all our different roles that we play. And I believe ultimately that it will pay off.
Thank you.
Biljana, you had also something to say, a reply.
If I talk too much, you wouldn't invited me. I'd like to connect what my colleague from Skopje said, Tanja Hafner, with what Ms. Ulrike said. I'm I literally grew up in civil society sector in Macedonia. I'm active as a volunteer since late 90s. And what I believed in always, that CSOs should be an advocates for change, for political change, to be members of the political processes. And I believed in what you said, that parliament should be a place where governments meet CSOs and opinions are exchanged and laws are made on base of that. But we have to see above that. We have to exit from that old view, because it's not working in every country. You mentioned one example. I have great example from Macedonia when the new law on abortion was brought. Civil society organizations were not, I don't remember in the history of civil society when organizations were more tight and more connected. The law was brought in a fast procedure. I remember the night when like 15, 16 women, we gathered. All night we were working, we developed key messages, keynotes in the parliament. Those women who were speaking, they were speaking in the name of all, and they were speaking from different perspectives of feminism, economic, feminist, health perspective. They had great arguments. None of those arguments were met and represented in the new law for abortion. So that's, for me, that was the turning point when I said, we cannot work with this institution. So this is the case only in Macedonia. I'm not saying it's universal, but I say in Macedonia, in this situation, we have to see the citizens as the mechanism of change, and we have to find ways how those citizens to be considered as political actors. And one more sentence and I'm finishing. We are used to see movements without one leader as a leaders, to consider movements without one leader as leaderless movements. We have to change that and consider them as leaderful movements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We invited you and all the others because we know that you all have something very important to say, and that is why we gathered today already, and we discussed the entire day, and we discussed now, and we will continue tomorrow, and that is why we invited another special person to tell us what he has to say.
Because civil society is quite diverse and heterogeneous in all of its beauty and different aspects which we cover. The beauty can be most of the time also very poetic. And we, as activists, we do also tend to forget to look out of the box. That's why we invited a very special guest, our second special guest for tonight, who actually took the time, came from Herzegovina, and offered us his insight or the possibility to wrap up these discussions and to give us a new perspective on how he personally sees not only the region but Europe in general. He's one of the most renowned singer-songwriters from this region, also one of the very first of very pronounced anti-war activists, and living for a long time in Belgrade, also one of the most foreknown green activists in this country and way beyond. And I may introduce to the stage His Excellency, because he's also a UNICEF ambassador for children's rights, Rambo Amadeus. Please.
Hello everybody. Well, I write down a lot of things, but I forget my glasses. Then it means nothing. During I listening to you, I get drunk because I've felt a lot of pain when I listen all that problems. Well, let's start with us. I can't talk in behalf of Montenegro or in behalf of Serbia because I'm son of Yugoslavia and I travel a lot as a musician. I can talk only in behalf of former Yugoslavia. I think same culture, same anthropology, same people is living there, but occasionally they are believing only in different gods. And I think the main problem is that they believe too much in gods. Then it means, first problem is that people got a strong belief in a second life, in heaven. And they don't pay attention a lot in life, in the first life here on ground. Second problem is self-production of alcohol. When you travel around former Yugoslavia, around Balkan, you can find beautiful rakia. 70% of that beverages are excellent, better than any whiskey. It's beautiful rakia. But 30%, because people are not well educated, they don't know everything about fraction distillation. Then it means a lot of methyl alcohol come in glasses. And medicine said that methyl alcohol ruined the brain. Then, when you have connection, strong belief in a second life and ruined brains, you don't have very good base for democracy. Of course, third problem is democracy. Well, I don't know any better form of society than democracy, but this process of democracy is more than damage producing. We were living in peace in Yugoslavia, and the world decided to give us democracy. Okay, we vote freely, and people voted for nationalists, for war, for believing in God, for different churches. And a war in Yugoslavia was a direct product of democracy. People decided to go in war, freely, democratically. Why? Why is like that? Because majority of people in the world, not only in our place, are stupid. And when you give people a chance to vote, you give chance also to unliterate people to vote. And I don't have to remind you about Germany before like 70 years. They got democracy. Adolf Hitler was like a cool guy who promised few beautiful things for Germany. And because majority of people was stupid, and each vote counted similarly, intellectuals fall in apathy, and they said, oh, what the fuck, we are in minority now, nobody believes to us, everybody believes to him, and we got a mess. Same was in Yugoslavia. We got a change to vote, but majority of unliterate people vote of them counts equally as vote of educated people. And now what we have? Now we don't have democracy. We have a dictatorship of the stupidness. And that's it everywhere. It is in Macedonia, in Kosovo, in Montenegro, in everywhere. It is. I don't have to mention it. I was thinking how it is possible to manage it. When we want in some country to put democracy, we need to make a different process. A voting process has to be connected with some kind of very simple literacy test. Just to put with the stamp letters name of the country you are living in and name of the party you are voting on. And that is enough. I guarantee you that you should have a completely different picture of parliament. Now what you have? You have this local guys who came in power, you know, simile gaudet. Majority is stupid. You got guys who are not clever enough for running the country. Country is a very complicated system. It is like you are running the spaceship. Imagine that workers on a spaceship are voting for each command which button has to be pushed on when the spaceship is in some situation. That spaceship couldn't go to Pančevo, not to some different world. Then, it means if we continue with this very perfid and very stupid way of democracy, what we will have for 20 years? Because governments and leaders are more and more stupid, we will have for 20 or 30 years, we will have that countries will be like destroyed completely, and we will have like only corporations. Corporations will rule everything up. They will get their own armies, policies, passports, everything, and we will stay out without countries. We will have anarchy and corporations. If you don't work for corporation, you will be no one. Then, please, if you think about democracy, think about Greek democracy before 3,000 years. Who votes in Greek democracy? Only 1% of the people. You can say to me that I'm some kind of elitist or some kind of, I don't know, what can you say about my words? But please, when you have a boat, ship, whom you will give to run that boat? Captain, of course, who finished the school for the running for the driving that ship. That's it. Democracy is cause of the problems in democracy. That is my opinion, and if we continue to count unliteral, I can dress a monkey now. I can pick up some baboon or chimpanzee and dress him to go and to do this and this. And if you give me like 500,000 of well-dressed monkeys, I can become a president of any country in the Balkan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rambo Amadeus, for your radical critique. Please, you can stay. For your radical critique of the election system, modern day democracy. As we said, artists, and that's why we appreciate them, they tend to think out of the box, many times in very radical terms. But I think after Rambo's closing words or retrospective, we might come to an end, right, Hedvig?
Yes, I would like to thank to the panel. I would like to thank to the audience. I invite you all to continue to discuss whatever, to enjoy the fact that we still are able to organize events where people can meet and talk face to face. I think this is one of the major successes of such gatherings, and I value it very much. And this is why we wanted to provide you with an atmosphere where you can relax a bit in the context of a conference. So we organized some cocktail reception after this debate. Enjoy it. And I wish to see you, most of you, tomorrow morning, early morning here in order to continue with the serious talk. Thank you very much.
Zaključio kašu, uključio limu, pustio na kori,